Welcome back. You're watching News Centre. More than 4 months after former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina fled to India, the country's new interim government is calling for her extradition. Massive protests in Bangladesh forced Sheikh Hasina to flee the country, ending her 16-year rule. Dhaka has formally sent a diplomatic note to New Delhi asking for Hasina's extradition for face the judicial process in the country. Hasina is currently living in India at an undisclosed location. The International Crimes Tribunal in Dhaka has issued arrest warrants for Hasina and several of her former ministers, advisors, military and civil officials for crimes against humanity and genocide. The relationship between India and Bangladesh has been strained since Hasina's ouster. This brings us to the contours of the extradition treaty between the two nations. While Bangladesh need not provide any evidence of offence committed to seek Hasina's extradition, there are some grounds under which India can refuse to extradite her. This includes accusations not made in good faith, military offences, among others, and also if the allegations are politically motivated. There is a political exception to the extradition treaty. So how will India respond now to this extradition request? So far, we have not made any official comment beyond saying that, yes, we have received the note verbal. We are now joined by Ambassador Deepak Vohra, former Indian ambassador to Poland and Sudan as well. Ambassador Vohra, thank you very much for joining us. This does put India in a tricky situation. We do have an extradition treaty, but are we going to honor it, or how are we going to interpret it is the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Luthra. Always a pleasure to be on your amazing channel. And the way you put it across is brilliant. I can't do better than what you have said. Let me just give you a little bit of a background. The extradition process, normally, we deal with criminals. We deal with people who have committed murder, or they're involved in money laundering, they're involved in financial crimes, they're involved in terrorism. This is what our focus has been in the past. Now, during my assignments in Africa, there used to be this character called Blaise Compaoré. He was the president of Burkina Faso, and then there was a revolution, and he ran off and got asylum in Senegal. And nobody has been able to bring him back, as demands were made. Very rarely have former heads of government, as far as I know, been brought back to the country which they once ruled, because they were told that, you know, they left the country, just as Bashar al-Assad has run away from Syria. I don't know if the Syrians have made a demand for his extradition, but it will be denied. As far as we are concerned, there's a 2013 extradition treaty between India and Bangladesh. You quite rightly pointed out. We revised it, I think, 4 or 5 years later. That means in 2017-18, in order to expedite the extradition of wanted criminals. Is she a criminal? That's the first question that has to be addressed. Now, by somebody saying that, yeah, she is guilty of killing people on the streets and ordering the military to go shoot them, etc., there has to be very hard evidence. Of course, what she is being accused of doing is it responds to the concept of dual criminality. I mean, if you go around shooting people in the streets, well, that's a terrible thing to do. So if some of her people have done it and they are in India, that can be looked at separately. But she herself, I'm not aware she took a Sten gun and went down and started clobbering people on the streets. So to my understanding, sir, this is essentially a political issue. The prime minister of a country, it so happens that she was friendly to us, even if she was not, and she sought refuge in India, we would consider it on a case-by-case basis. There's no hard and fast rule. She has sought refuge here. The successor government, which is not an elected government, we must remember that, sir. It's some fellow who proclaims that he's the chief advisor to the government. And it's a government, it's a deadly cocktail of senility, like this 87-year-old chap or 85-year-old fellow who runs it, and a bunch of students who are in their early 20s. So this kind of senility and inexperience, a very deadly cocktail. So how do we take it from there? We do not have an elected government. We do not have a duly appointed government. Do we consider a request by whoever is being appointed as the chief advisor on we know who was responsible for it. Now, these are issues that will have to be considered. It's not going to take a very short period of time. It will take quite some time. May I also remind you, sir, that I think in 4 or 5 years ago, my middle-age memory or my old-age memory doesn't serve me very well. We had extradited 2 chaps that Sheikh Hasina wanted who were involved in the killing of her father. And that was the assassination, as you know, took place in 1975. And those chaps had assumed identities and were living somewhere in West Bengal. I think they were military chaps. So we sent them back, and later I heard that they were executed. Similarly, there was an Ulfa character called Anup Chetia, and Sheikh Hasina sent him back to us. The earlier government had put him in jail. He was in jail for 15 years in Dhaka, but they wouldn't send him back. So ultimately, it depends also on the relationship between the two governments. Is there goodwill or is there not? If there is goodwill, then there's mutual respect. There's mutual sensitivity to each other's concerns. So you know that there are a couple of these terrible fellows hanging around in England who are going through the entire process of law, which will take 5,000 years. By then, they would have moved to a better world. Then there is that Rana character who was involved in 2611 in India.
Ambassador Vohra,
hanging around somewhere in the United
what we would also like
States
to understand from you, if India does not honor this treaty or say or tell Bangladesh that, sorry, these are political allegations and there is a political exception and we exercise our discretion in the matter. If we do that, does Bangladesh have recourse to any international convention or platform where it can go and challenge the decision taken by the Indian government?
No, you can go to the International Criminal Court if you want, but their decisions will not be binding on us. And in any case, we are not signatories to the Rome Statute that established the court. So we have to take a decision in our own self. And what I was trying to tell you, sir, at some detail, I'm sorry, I went a bit overboard, was that ultimately the decision is ours. You know, anybody can ask for anything, but we will decide whether it is in our interest that this lady, who has not been accused of directly murdering people, is she a criminal like anybody else on the street? Is she a money launderer? Has she cheated anybody? These are the issues that need to be looked at very carefully. Simply because the Bangladesh government said, oh, she's a terrible person, give her back to us, we won't, sir. So this has to be done. I, in the course of my career, 51 years in diplomacy and counting, have had the opportunity to interact with foreign government. We brought back a chap from Senegal also. I remember his name even some years ago, a chap called Pujari, funny fellow Pujari, but had dozens of cases registered against him. So we brought him back. The host government where the fellow is hiding has to have the kind of relationship with India to say, yes, you have given us enough evidence, we are sending the guy back. In the case of Sheikh Hasina, we do not have the evidence yet. Of course, they don't have to give it to us. They've made the request. Now the next stage will be for us to consider whether it's political persecution or is she being persecuted for crimes that are crimes in both Bangladesh and in India.
All right. Thank you very much for putting it so well, Ambassador Vohra, explaining us the nuances of the extradition treaty and how the relationship between the two countries also matter in deciding anything. And possibly in this case, India is going to see these allegations as politically motivated. We've completely run out of time, but thank you for being with us. Now, before we end the show, let's talk a bit about a collaborative initiative by GROW and CNBC-TV18. Our mission is to equip you with valuable insights and strategies to navigate the markets and make informed investment decisions. Today, we will help you understand the 1 to 2% rule, which helps protect your capital.
You know, successful trading isn't just about finding the next big opportunity. It's about managing your risk to protect your capital. One of the best ways to do that is the 1 to 2% rule. Risk no more than 1 to 2% of your total capital on any single trade. So if you have 10,000 rupees in your trading account, you'd only risk 100 to 200 rupees on each trade. This limits your potential losses and gives you room to grow. The idea is to preserve your capital over the long run. Live another day to make another trade. By sticking to a small risk per trade, you'll be able to